Sometimes some things that we hear happening in the churches, we can't help but shake our heads in shock because you used to hear it and you're still hearing it with one particular church, but it looked like it happening in more of them. A mother and daughter claim that they were SCXUALLY assaulted by church leader. I was watching something on Court TV and the judge got so fed up with this woman telling her sort of bulls, and every time she explained her situation, she said she went to her pastor and her pastor told her this, her pastor told her that. And of course, the judge was fed up because she says sometime and not everything no figure to no pastor for, because the pastor don't necessarily have to be right at all times. And everything that pastor man tell her was wrong for her life. Now, this is a 76-year-old woman we're talking about. She was much younger at the time because this happened 40 years ago. And her 58-year-old child have vowed to expose a pastor who they allegedly say raped them 40 years ago. Guys, don't think something is wrong with your hearing because you hear right. Pastor, and 40 years ago, it simply means that the man is still leading the flock. The pastor who leads a New Testament flock was a guest in the woman's house when the incident allegedly occurred. At the time, this woman, who was 33 at the time of the incident, she lived alone with her 15-year-old daughter. The pastor, who was new to the community, had nowhere to stay, and the woman agreed to let him stay at their Eastern Jamaica house until the church was able to find him suitable accommodation. She trusted him. He was a Christian, a leader of the church. And how much safer could she be than with a pastor in the house covering her with prayers? The woman was in her deep sleep and felt somebody ramming in her. The first thing came to her mind was somebody break into her house. And when the woman jumped up and saw the pastor, she could have never believed. She could have never believed her eyes that the man of God was the one. And all the man of God did, no explanation, nothing, just stare upon her. Now, the woman went to the church and tried to get the reverend removed from her home. But she was told that his accommodation was not yet ready. So reluctantly, she allowed him to stay in her home. And that was the mistake she made. The animal was a dog. Excuse me. Let me rephrase that. My description about dogs, because dogs has more class and they are more humane. The beast did not stop there. He went on to do the same thing with her daughter, who was living with her. Now, a grown woman, the daughter has also recounted her ordeal. She recalled the abuse beginning with a kiss, which she confessed that she did not tell her mother about. We have to remember here that parent and child 40 years ago weren't friends, but parents and child and the poor kid had to keep it to herself. Here's the sad part, because she was a child. She didn't realize that she was being abused. She didn't know she was a victim. She thought she did something wrong, like she did something to bring this on herself. And she was so afraid to tell her mother because she didn't want her to think she had done something bad. Now, the child at the same time, who is now an adult, said the abuse gradually got worse and led to psychological trauma, causing her to suffer from anxiety and depression for decades. Something she kept to herself and never tell nobody, and feel that she did something wrong to cause it to happen to her. The impact of the alleged abuse on the mother was similarly stark. She claimed to have been impregnated by the pastor, and to compound the whole situation, she was read out in church when it became clear to members that she was pregnant. It was so devastating that it led her to try to commit suicide while pregnant. This is what you would call holier than thou. Put what the pastor did aside. Some of those same people in the church forget that at least consented. They at least consented and did worse than worse. She didn't do anything, but let me say worse than what they were thinking she did. Some of them maybe were doing it with the pastor and run her out of the church. Because if that man can come to the house and do that, can you imagine what he was doing? How much he did knock the church sister them? The woman couldn't take the shame and disgrace and had to run away. People were laughing and jeering her, and she just could not take it. Them say bad luck worse than Obia. And this woman luck was bad because that same daughter was the product of an unlawful and it was a bad act committed against her when she was 15. Something happened to her at 15 also. And then she a big woman now in her 30s and the comeback happened to her again. That's why I say bad luck sometimes worse than Obia. The woman said although she did not tell her family members that her pregnancy was a result of RAPE, the allegations were denied by the man. Torn and devastated, she then set about rebuilding her life, and that pushed her to become what she became. She went back to school and became a teacher and then got saved in the church. And that was the first incident when she straightened her life out because of what the man do her and everything like that. And now she decided to start life all over again. So she got to the church and she got saved. And after she entered the church, she moved up to become the youngest officer in the church. That is how she met Dag Darcy, Reverend Dag Darcy, 3 years ago. Mother and daughter sit down now because them are two big people and them are talk over what happened. First time I confront each other what happened and they realize it happened to both of them. Now when this mother hear what happened to her daughter, remember she's a mother, you know. It happened to her bad, yes it bad, and not too bad. But when she realized what happened to her daughter, can you imagine what that woman went through? All the trauma and everything just came right back to her. The woman now determined that the pastor should be called to answer for his alleged deeds. But hear what happened now. She wrote the administrative bishop of the church to inform him of the allegations. The bishop, in a letter dated July 13, 2021, replied saying the matter ventilated in the letter are of a very serious nature and will be thoroughly investigated. The woman was told that the church's National Executive Council has concluded that a hearing needs to be held to allow the pastor to answer to the allegations. The pastor, the letter said, will be required to answer to the charge of unbecoming ministerial conduct, but the woman has been told she must return to Jamaica to attend the hearing. The woman is now living in the US. Meanwhile, the bishop contacted by the newspaper, which is the Star, refused to comment on the issue. Yet the woman have vowed to continue fighting, and you can't blame her. Expose him, because he should not be up there preaching to people. And she said, I want the world to know what he did to us. He doesn't deserve to stand on any pulpit and to be in front of any church. And even though this happened to us years ago, we are still suffering because of it. This story is very sad, and it is ridiculous that she contacted the church in July of 2021 and now it's 2024 and the man is still going up on the pulpit preaching to people. What kind of a human being is he? The devil leading a flock.